I'm Jonathan Hallett. I'm a lecturer in the School of Public Health in the Faculty of Health Sciences, and I work with students in first year, third year and postgraduate students. I guess there was two main focuses for the eScholars project. The first one was around addressing potential isolation among external or fully online students and finding ways that we can actually connect them to each other as well as to internal students and increase that interaction. The second focus was broadly around increasing technological literacy of our students. We assume that they've got a level of comfort and proficiency with a range of digital tools when that's not actually always the case. They're familiar with the things that they use. So this eScholars project looked at a few different tools that we could use, partly around different ways to engage learning styles that students might have, as well as to actually explore some different types of digital tools that students might interact with out in the workplace as well. A big part of our, particularly the health promotion degree, is around practical learning and work integrated learning. So applied tasks that they might do out in the workforce and actually incorporating them into our assessments. So we tried to use a different range of tools. For the first years, we used online photo galleries, which was essentially a way to get students to explore a particular concept, upload that onto a Flickr gallery, and allow all students to be able to access that and see each other's, interpretation of the concept. And then that was then applied in class as a discussion tool to really explore the things in more detail. And provide more variety and diversity interpretation than would otherwise been if a student had just had to write a basic written report about the topic. We also introduced a range of video technology throughout the courses. So we wanted to have some welcome videos for all students to really introduce the teaching staff to students, but also specifically for external students looking at ways to develop electronic lectures that really focus on their needs. In the past we've often recorded internal lectures, but because a lot of our lectures are very activity based, there's lots of discussion, recording those doesn't really fit the needs of an external student. So providing specific videos recorded directly for them addresses their learning needs rather than the internal lectures, which tends to be good for revision for internal students looking back at it, but not so well for the external students. One of the more complex activities that we developed was online digital debates, and that was using simply the Blackboard blogging system. And there was a few reasons why we chose that, but in particular, lots of the students have a whole range of social media accounts. They're logging into all sorts of accounts all the time, and we wanted something that integrated really well with Blackboard to avoid having to send them to different websites. And we also chose the blogging program partly because there's a lot of programs out there that we could use that allow lots of interaction between students. The problem with that, though, potentially is that if there's a lot of different functionality, lots of multimedia attached to it, like VoiceThread, there's a potential that the focus of the assessment could actually move towards interacting with the technology rather than the actual purpose of the assessment. So by using just the blogging tool, it allowed the opportunity to engage with something digitally rather than just a word processing software, but it also kept the focus on the written word and the arguments that they produced within that particular assessment. That assessment was essentially doing a debate. We had the students post a series of blog posts. They were in teams and we integrated both the external and internal students together, and we allocated them to either affirmative or negative teams, and so they were arguing for or against a particular proposition. So they took turns making a post and then commenting on each other's posts. So these debates went over a period of about 2 weeks, and the reason for that was whilst there's a certain set of skills around being able to rebut an argument in real time, we had to consider the challenges of working with external students that may well be in different time zones to us. So the focus was really less on immediate rebuttal and more about thinking through and critiquing an argument and being able to apply those skills. And so we had specific deadlines for each team of when they had to post their arguments, and that was clearly outlined before they began. One of the things that we put in place earlier on in semester in terms of scaffolding that assignment was ensuring that students actually had an experience of posting a blog. I think we can assume that you write something and you push submit, and that's a very simple process, but I think if it's a unique and new environment for students, they can feel a bit uncomfortable about that. So what we did first earlier on in semester is actually get the students to write letters to stakeholders around this particular issue and then they posted the responses onto Blackboard and then commented on each other's posts, which allowed them to, I guess in a very non-threatening way, be able to interact with the software, be able to start that process of analysing what the language that was used in the posts and that kind of thing. So that built on into the other part of the assessment. So in terms of ensuring that students were comfortable, we had that practice session at the beginning of semester, but we also had a face-to-face debate that the students watched. So we talked about how you develop an argument and how do you rebut and critique each other's arguments. So they could see it in a face-to-face format, which is probably something they're more familiar with. They might have had that experience in high school. And then I provided an example blog-based debate so they could actually see what that to and fro and the flow of argument actually look like when it's translated from a face-to-face discussion to within Blackboard. So we actually conducted interviews with a range of students after the end of semester to explore what, I guess, their comfort level with using some of the technology and also the learning outcomes themselves. I guess if we start with some of the negatives per se, the one that often comes up was having to work in a team, and that can be very challenging because it's a skill set of negotiation that we want students to have when they're going into the workforce, because they often can't decide who they get to work with. But it's certainly a challenging group assessment. And so ensuring that we've got good processes for peer review and individual marks rather than always allocating group marks can address some of those concerns. There was a lot of good positive feedback around the use of the blogs. Lots of the students had never used the blogs, so even though it's a function within Blackboard, they hadn't come across it before. And so they liked the opportunity to be able to engage in a different way. One of the benefits of using the online blogs was that it meant that all students, regardless of whether they were external or whether they were anxious about talking in front of their peers, could actually engage in developing that particular skill set. I guess one of the main benefits from this program overall was really around providing students exposure to a whole variety of mediums and knowing that learning wasn't just about writing long essays or doing exams, that there's actually a range of learning styles that we're actually taking some responsibility in engaging with students in their own spaces and their own the mediums that they feel most comfortable with, and I think that that's really important.